We're live.
Hey, thanks again, Larry the Liberty Guy. Welcome back to this Thursday edition of In the Dugout. We've got a great game planned for you today. In fact, that voice you just heard, Larry the Liberty Guy, he's going to be on with us momentarily to talk about his latest article. Larry the Liberty Guy also doubles as a journalist, and we talked with him last week about the drag queen story hour that's happening this weekend. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And Larry has written an article just posted today about just this despicable Providence schools reading list. When you see what they're putting out there for kids to read, it's unbelievable. So stay tuned for Larry on that. We're also going to talk to Alan Waters. Alan Waters is the announced candidate to run against Congressman David Cicilline next year in 2022 in District 1, U.S. Congressional Seat District 1. Alan Waters will comment. We invited the congressman to appear, no response. Alan Waters will comment on Cicilline's public defense of Sheldon Whitehouse's race hypocrisy, which we've talked about all week long. And then, of course, at the bottom of the hour, we'll have Dr. Andrew Bostom. And we're going to talk about how he has, he and you're among the most informed viewers in the world, because we've informed you for months about the potential dangers on younger folk, about this COVID vaccine. And finally, national and international health organizations have come to the same realization that we've been telling you about for months. So we're going to go into that in some detail, including Rhode Island cases with Dr. Andrew Bostom. Next week, Tuesday, is going to be critical race theory, a whole show dedicated to that and what's going on in schools, Providence schools, Charahoe schools, stunning stuff. Next week, pro-life Wednesday, we're going to update on the status of what's going on with the legislation and the whole pro-life movement. Where are the threats? What's going to happen the end of this session, maybe later this year? What's on the table? What's not on the table? And then at some point next week, we're going to talk with someone from Portland, Oregon, to see if there are parallels between Portland and Providence. Portland may be a dead city. It may be a city that literally shuts down for good. It's that bad out there. You're going to hear about that, and we're going to discuss whether or not Providence is on that same path. All right, let's get into some batting practice, and I'm going to put on my Coeur d'Alene cap again. It's the cap I picked up in Idaho earlier this month. It's a great resort in Idaho, and it's a good looking white cap, matches my white shirt today. So don't ever say I'm not one of those color-coded, color-coordinated dressers, because today it's beautiful, right? Okay. I had a discussion, very sad discussion yesterday with an owner of a fast food chain store. I won't mention him or the chain because he didn't want to come on the show, but he was just making an appeal to me, desperate. He said, I just got back from driving to Massachusetts. I had to go pick up food supplies to make for our sandwiches because the company had no drivers because nobody's working. Everyone's sitting at home collecting unemployment and this extra incentive that the federal government has thrown onto it. And not only didn't they have a driver to deliver the food to us, and I had to go pick it up myself as the owner, but they don't even have all the regular supplies we order, the cheese, certain cheeses and certain other condiments, because their vendors can't get enough employees to deliver the product. So he was making an appeal to me, please, what can we do to end this unemployment incentive that's keeping people home? Well, I don't know what you can do other than unemployment, other than put some public pressure. But take a look at this stat. It just came out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics yesterday, on Wednesday. as you know, many red state governors, I think maybe 24, I'm not sure what the number is, but many red state governors have said no to the extra federal incentive. We got to get people back to work, off their duff, off of their couches and collecting overly generous unemployment checks from the state and from the federal government. And a lot of red state governors have said no. I don't know of one blue state governor that said no. And look, it shows in the unemployment rate. In red states, people are going back to work. In blue states, not so fast. And as you can see here, the top 10 states with the highest unemployment rates all have blue governors. Now, Louisiana is a red state, but they do have a Democrat governor. Pennsylvania is kind of purple, but also a Democratic governor. Rhode Island, by the way, is 19th on this list with, I think, a 5.8 unemployment rate right now. So whether it's people moving from state to state, whether it's these unemployment statistics and other data, there's now an increasing divergence between conservative policies in red states, liberal socialist policies in blue states, and it's making a difference in the statistics, dramatic, clear delineations. And we also know that people are moving out of blue states and into red states largely. So we are among the bluest. They don't seem to care in this state that things are getting worse, that people are leaving, that our unemployment is high, that people are sitting home. They just don't seem to care. They just want to keep pushing this left-wing agenda, and things are only got to get worse. And ultimately, it's up to you, the voters. You know, are we going to do something about it or not at the ballot box? That's all there is to it. All right, a very rare but a big victory, I'll say first for our center, but more importantly for parents. You're all well aware of the Nicole Solis controversy in South Kingston, how that school committee actually threatened to sue her publicly, put it on the agenda, then they demeaned her and called her part of a racist organization, whatever else they did to her when she just put in, a lot of public records requests. We were the first to call for the resignations of the school committee chair and of the union executive, who's also a member of that school committee, Sarah Markey. Well, just this week, I think 2 nights ago, last week, the chairwoman, Emily Comiskey, under pressure from us, from Nicole, from others in our coalition calling for the resignation, she stepped down as chair. This week, she resigned from the committee. She's off the committee. The other woman, Sarah Markey, apparently is on some kind of leave from the committee. So again, I want to thank you for, and I think those petitions you're signing, and we got to keep signing them. If you go to rifreedom.org/stop indoctrination, not only do we amass those signatures, but it's going to send an email to public officials. And I can tell you those emails made a difference. So in these resignations we're seeing in South Kingston. So the center was the first to call for those resignations, and there are resignations. All right, let's stay on this story. In South Kingston and what it has led to. And it's so typical of the way and this isn't just a left thing. I'm sure this is the way the right works as well when they have unchecked power, but the left has unchecked power in this state. There's just, not even close to veto proof, to sustain a veto, to override a veto, I should say. So Nicole Solis and probably hundreds of other parents in this state have put in records requests of school committees, of towns. And as you saw, the South Kingston School Committee not happy about it, not happy about it at all. And Legal Insurrection has discovered through documents that they obtained, Again, legalinsurrection.com. We're going to show you the website in just a second. Didn't even know much about them until a few weeks ago, but they're a Rhode Island-based firm that run by a lawyer, and they really covering national stories, but this South Kingstown story is a national story. So they've uncovered documents that reveal that the Rhode Island School Superintendents Association, in working with their friends in the unions, are working hard to modify public record laws so that they don't have to respond to requests from parents like Nicole Solis. In fact, they're demonizing parents like Nicole Solis for asking too many questions about public education in this state. And does it or does it not include critical race and other controversial gender teachings? So when the law becomes inconvenient, the left seeks to just change the law. So there's a push on right now, and here's the article on legal insurrection. So there's a push on right now led by the Rhode Island school superintendents who are backing these corrupt Marxist school boards because they don't want to give the information. They don't want to comply with these public records requests. And they're trying to change the law. I mean, just think about that. So we'll see what goes on here. The second article that Legal Insurrection put out, and I'll show you on that a follow-up, talks about the ACLU's position on this. And it's unclear. The ACLU is sort of saying, yeah, we think the laws need to be changed too, but maybe not to the extent that the superintendents want to change it. So we're not sure where this is happening, whether there's legislation, whether there's talk of legislation, whether they'll try to, I don't think they can do this by executive order. We're not exactly sure what process, but we know that they don't want to comply with the law. So we're just going to change the law. Isn't this typical? Isn't just this typical of what you see from those who are drunk with power? We saw the same thing happen a few years ago with the sales tax. You might remember, by the way, so let me just stay on this a second. So again, go to legalinsurrection.com, and it's a very, unclear what Stephen Brown of the Rhode Island ACLU is saying, but this is having some momentum, and just look at this comment from the Rhode Island school superintendents in this article. We know that many of our citizens, and they're referring to Nicole Solis, and they're referring to you and me, many of our citizens live in separate news reality with Fox, Newsmax, and their ilk. Again, do you see that right here? Bingo. This is Rhode Island school superintendents demonstrating their disdain for you, me, Nicole Solis, and any other parent who's concerned, stating that we live in some alternate reality. What have we been saying on this show for months? That it's the left who lives in the never land of make-believe. These are real American, patriotic-blooded parents that you see rising up in South Kingstown, rising up in Charahoe, rising up in Charahoe and in other towns, and in Loudoun County, Virginia, and in many other localities across this country. And the left, just like Hillary Clinton said, just like Joe Biden said, they have such disdain for you as a deplorable, an irredeemable deplorable, for standing firm on good old-fashioned traditional American values. This is the cultural revolution that's on its way. And as we said yesterday's show, they have overstepped. There's going to be a counter revolution, and it's not going to be advocacy groups like us that are leading it. It's going to be grassroots led. We're going to help. We're going to fight this Marxist anti-American stuff. And the reality is going to win. And just like everything else, when the left, whatever the left accuses us on the right of doing, when they make that a public declaration, it's how they cover for the fact that it's really they who are doing it. In this case, it is they who are living in the never, never land of make-believe. It is they who believe that you can have surgery, take drugs, and click your heels together and magically turn from a male into a female. It is they who believe that it doesn't matter whether or not you've had COVID, whether or not you're young, that one size vaccine fits for all. It is they who believe that climate change is an existential threat to our survival, and that climate change is the biggest threat facing our military in the world. Not China, not Russia, climate change. You tell me who's living in the world of make-believe. It is they who believe that white supremacy is the greatest security threat to America overall, and that domestic terrorism is a greater threat to this country than the real terrorists out there, wherever they come from. Who's living in the alternate reality? You or them? Us or them? I mean, just think of that statement from Rhode Island school superintendents demonstrating their disdain for parents living in a separate news reality with Fox, Newsmax, and their ilk. And now part of this cultural revolution has to do with the story we covered last week. And that was this drag queen story hour that's taking place this coming weekend in West Warwick schools. I want to show you an email from Kara Young. Now, Kara is one of the great religious conservatives and activists in their state. She tragically lost her husband, I believe it was last year, Chris Young. Many of you remember Chris. But here's an email I want to share with you and hope you will join either in prayer or in action. So these drag queen story hours that Larry the Liberty Guy wrote about last week and that we talked about on this show, taking place this Saturday, June 26th at the West Warwick Public Library. One drag queen story hour at 11, another one at 1 p.m. So to counter that, concerned parents are having a rosary rally outside the library, a peaceful rosary rally to demonstrate that we don't want our kids being taught this filth and that we don't agree with this drag queen agenda. So it's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. this Saturday, West Warwick Public Library. Here's the address on Main Street in West Warwick. If you can't attend, Kara Young asks you to pray to St. John the Baptist, whose feast is today. I mean, if I was a good Catholic, I would know that, but I'm glad Kara Young reminded us. You can see here, there's also a letter from Tyler Rowley, who we had on our show last week with Larry to discuss this drag queen story hour. And again, the thing that I won't even say the word, I'm embarrassed even to show you, but you know, this person who's performing this story hour portrays the Virgin Mary, seemingly at first carrying the Christ child, but in the end, it's really this. It's a sex toy. And this is the person who's going to be teaching 0 to 6-year-olds this Saturday at the West Warwick Public Library. They've tried to appeal to the town council, and our just letter says, if they're not going to act, at least we need to be on record that we tried to do the right thing by our children, to defend our faith and defend our children, defend our morals, defend our culture. My words. So if you can't attend Saturday, please say a prayer. And it gets even worse. Okay, joining us now is the author on the Ocean State Current of articles on the Drag Queen Story Hour and what we're going to discuss here in a minute, the Providence Summer Reading List, this rancid, horrible list of books that are being pushed on our kids in Providence, probably in other school districts too. And it's our own Larry the Liberty Guy is back by popular demand. Larry the Liberty Guy, welcome back as a guest and producer. It's like those actors who produce, direct the movies and act in it. You're now a dual star. Welcome back to the Dugout, Larry.
Stan, thanks for having me on the show. Glad to be here.
And you got your Red Sox cap on, I see today?
I do. I also have my journalist hat on today, so double duty there too.
All right, so let's get right to this really groundbreaking article. Again, you did an article on this years ago. It's on oceanstatecurrent.com. The Ocean State Current is our video and news blog site. What is going on with this Providence reading list? Tell us what you found and wrote in your article, Larry.
Absolutely, Stan. We love to do continuing stories on the Current. So we find a topic, we like to stick to it, come back to it, re-examine it. So the difference between this time when we're doing it and the last time that we're doing it is it's even more blatant what's going on. So in 2019, we did an article where we found it was the summer reading list produced by it's the official summer reading list in conjunction with libraries. We found a book. It was terrible. It was had graphic descriptions of child molestation, very offensive material. It was called America by E.F. Frank. Now we've come back to it again in 2021, and we found that there were 3 books that were really, outside of mainstream values, outside of American values. The first is called Stamped. It's Racism, Anti-Racism in You by Jason Reynolds and Ibram Kennedy.
Yep. All right, now Ibram Kendi is the author of the whole critical race theory stuff.
He is one of the leading figures in critical race theory. He really rose to prominence. People found out about him when he criticized Amy Coney Barrett for adopting Black children.
Yep.
I mean, this woman loves Black children. She's an upstanding mother, and he attacked her for it, which is something we highlighted in the story. So I went through his book. I read his book, and what was striking to me was that there was a chapter on Black Power, and he talked about how Black Power, he kind of coached it a little bit with what he said, that it was, but he used words like burning down the white community, and it's offensive stuff.
Burning down the white community.
Right. So he says it, and then he backtracks in the book. To me, this is not something that you want to be teaching to 14-year-olds.
Look, it's one thing to praise Black Power, but it's another thing to demonize another race. That's just my comment on it. All right. So
I believe in America. I believe in American power, right? So I think that Americans should be powerful. We have, this is a theme that you've been talking about, is American privilege. All Americans should be privileged, and certainly Black people are Americans, and they should be powerful as Americans.
So let's bring up, this part in your article where you have looks like a tweet from Ibram Kendi. Tell us about why you put this in the article.
Well, I wanted to establish the character of the person writing the book. I mean, that's critical to what we're talking about here. So this is why I put it in the article. This is a fact. This is his reputation in the community. This is the kind of material that is also in the book, but this is what he is known for.
And this guy is authoring a book that Providence schools are recommending kids read. Okay.
Right.
All right. What's the second book you found?
Yeah, so the next book I found is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and it details, I have a quote in the article, and since I have a chance, I'm going to give a little warning. The quote is very graphic.
Disgusting. This is an actual, it's not a quote, this is an excerpt from the book, right?
Yep, it's a quote from the excerpt from the book. This is direct text from the book that we took out.
Are you actually going to say it?
No, I'm not. I'm gonna say what happened. I'm not gonna read. I'm not gonna say the quote.
Yeah. In fact, I'm not going to put the text on
Yeah,
the
don't.
screen. You go to Ocean State Cart and read the article yourself. I mean, I can't even say this stuff.
Yeah,
This is how bad it is.
he describes the homosexual sex act in both giving and receiving the homosexual sex act. We have the giving quote on there. It is
On males, right? On
on
males.
males. Yes. He describes his first sexual experience. And again, this is a book targeted not towards adults. This is targeted towards 14-year-olds.
It's so disgusting. We can't discuss it or even show it on air right now. So that was the second book. All Boys Aren't Blue. What's the blue refer to?
Blue for boys, pink for girls.
Oh, I see. Okay. I
Yep.
see. All right.
Parents deserve to know that this is happening in the schools, right? This is why we do these kinds of stories.
All boys don't act like traditional boys. Some have different. Yeah. Okay. I got it. All right. All right. And then the third book, Jane Against the World.
Yeah, so this is written by a journalist, but she's a journalist like I'm a journalist that has a clear point of view, and I am a conservative journalist, and she is a liberal journalist, and she has a far leftist view, and it's a book about abortion, and it's a pro-abortion book. She gives facts throughout the book that are on abortion, and they are designed to strengthen her argument. So, this isn't a topic, again, that 14-year-olds should be getting one side on. They deserve to have all the facts, while parents need to know that all the facts are that this reading list is that it's a leftist reading list. And these are examples from the book.
All right, let's raise this up a little. Do you know who put this reading list together?
It is officially endorsed by the department, the State Department of the Rhode Island State Department that handles libraries. The individual person that put it together, I was unable to find out who put it together. We've requested in the past for information on who put these books together. We've never gotten a response.
But I guess what I'm getting at, did the official school district, I guess they have a school committee in Providence, I guess, did they approve this list, or are they aware of this, or do you know?
The Providence Schools logo is on it. So somebody had to say somewhere that was okay. It was done in conjunction with the Providence Community Library, and usually the librarians are the ones that
who make the recommendations, and then maybe it's accepted by the school board or something.
That's usually the process, or somewhere in the department. But whether that happened in this case, I can't say.
All right, now in this case, and I think I'm probably wrong, there is no Providence School Board because the state is running. I don't even know if there still is a Providence School Committee that deals with other issues, but the state is running Providence Schools. So we're talking about a Providence School District reading list, a Providence School District that the state of Rhode Island is running by the Rhode Island Department of Education. So, I mean, can we say with absolute certainty, or do we just have to assume that it was the Rhode Island Department of Education who either compiled or at least authorized or endorsed this reading list?
I think it's an important question that parents need to be asking, right? So it seems like this is something that's happening across the state. I've gotten other reports. Parents are starting to come to me and saying that these things are in the other school districts, which I encourage parents to do. I encourage them to look at the reading list, but it's coming from somewhere. And I think it's an important question that we need to investigate if that's going all the way.
Well, but every school district is autonomous, but Providence is not. So that's what I'm saying here. Right. Do we know for sure that Rhode Island Department of Education had a hand in either compiling, authorizing, or endorsing this list, or we just don't know?
What I can say is their logo is on the list. So that to me is an endorsement of the list. But I can't say who authorized that.
And is the reading list public?
Yeah, we link to it right on oceanstatecurrent.com. It's on the public library's website.
All right, so let's do this. If you're watching and you're a parent or just a concerned citizen, you can probably find the reading list from your school district, wherever you live in Rhode Island, somewhere online. Do a search for it. And send us, if you see something really objectionable, send us an email with that link to that list at info@rifreedom.org. And then we'll put Larry, the Liberty guy, actually Larry, the journalist, we'll put Larry, the journalist, on the scent and on the trail, and we'll take a look at it and maybe mention it on this show. So info@rifreedom.org. You have to get involved. Larry, what's your message to parents here?
Yeah, so these are easy to do, right? So you'll be able to pull up the reading list, start Googling the topics, and all the books are available online, right? That's one of the things that's happened. And so you can get access to these books, know what's going on with your kids, and this critical race theory stuff, and all these other progressive agenda stuff. It's not what's appropriate for kids. I mean, we're talking about 14-year-olds. We need to protect our children. And I think parents across the state are waking up to these realities, and we're seeing that kind of pushback everywhere.
Yeah, whether it's over sexualization of the kids, critical race theory, gender neutrality. I mean, you name it, anti-American Marxism, you name it. Our kids are being used as political pawns, and it's going to take parents' involvement. We win when parents stand up and get unified. We can win. Doesn't mean we might reverse this list this year, but eventually we will win. Larry Gulhini, thank you for your great journalism. I didn't mean to ask you this. So compared to the reading list you wrote about 2 years ago, how would you compare them in terms of just which one's worse, I guess?
It's a subjective opinion, but this one is much worse.
So things are getting worse in this regard in the city of Providence, according to Larry.
Right.
All right, Larry Gulhini, thanks a lot. We'll see you back behind the scenes in a minute. Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, Dan.
Now, listen, as we've talked about on this show all week, the Sheldon Whitehouse controversy, and we mentioned on yesterday's show how Representative Congressman David Cicilline sprang to the defense of Sheldon Whitehouse's racial hypocrisy. Joining us now is Alan Waters, the declared candidate to challenge Congressman Cicilline. Alan Waters, welcome back to In the Dugout.
Mike, thanks for inviting me back. It's always a pleasure.
Now, for the record, I must note that we've also invited Congressman Cicilline to appear. We contacted both his Pawtucket and his Washington, D.C. office, and they have not responded to our requests. So we try to play it fair here. And if one side chooses not to play ball, well, that's not our problem. We're going to play the game anyway. All right. So Alan Waters, you just by way of background, you ran against Senator Jack Reed in the last election. Now you're taking on Congressman Cicilline.
Yes.
What does it say? What is your view of Congressman Cicilline's just knee-jerk reaction defense of Senator Whitehouse? Was it justified? What are your comments?
I believe that a U.S. Representative David Cicilline should have stayed out of it. But what he did do by coming to the defense of Senator Sheldon Whitehouse is that he showed what team he's really playing on. Now, here we are, especially in these days and times, when we're talking about racial issues, the continuing string of equality, people seeking racial justice. Those are long and ongoing discussions that won't be dissolved in this 5 minutes. But here we are with Mr. Whitehouse belonging to an exclusive club that has not allowed minorities, especially of African descent, in. And David Cicilline runs to his defense saying, well, he's always more or less been a champion of civil rights and what have you. But you know what?
So
there's the talk, and there's the walk. And right now, Sheldon's not walking the walk as he should. And David, he's going right to the defense of the elite white power structure in the Democratic Party.
All right, so that's kind of where I want to go next. You mentioned team. Obviously, they're on Team Democrat.
Yes,
obviously, you've just said they're on Team White Elitist, basically. But as a congressman, you're going to be on Club Republican team, right?
Yes, I am.
What is the rule? What is your rule of thumb? Obviously, David Cicilline, in my view, is putting politics over principle. We know he's been a advocate for civil rights. We know he doesn't always walk the talk, but politics, it seems in this case, is trumping principle. What is your rule of thumb when the Republicans are doing something that you might disagree with, or an individual, or as a party? What is your message to the voters about whether you will be loyal to the team or loyal to the principle?
First of all, I work for my constituents and not for the Republican Party. Now, my constituents in the state of Rhode Island are very diverse. But if someone is not doing the right thing or behaving the wrong way or showing some sort of unfairness or prejudice or whatever, I'm not backing anyone but the people whom I represent. It's always about do the right thing, because both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have
But
their
does that
challenges.
right thing usually mean you come down on the side of principle or on the side of party loyalty?
I come down on the side of principle. I am a principled candidate. We need change. We need a regular Rhode Islander standing up and trying to do the right thing, not bought out by money or bought out by ideology, but just standing up for God, the Constitution, and the constituents for whom I will be representing as the next congressman.
All right, and that let's go a little bit to a related topic. I think it's an extension of this race discussion on race, this national discussion we're having, and that involves the education of minority students. A lot of people say that education is the civil rights issue of our time. You have made it clear that increasing educational options for parents is important to you and will be part of your campaign. So first question are, where do you stand compared to your opponent, the incumbent Congressman Cicilline? Just quickly, where do you guys stand when it comes to charter schools and other forms of private school choice?
I believe in universal school choice in the state of Rhode Island. I am a student and a graduate of the Providence public school system and also University of Rhode Island. But most importantly is I believe that no one should be trapped by their zip code or their economic circumstances, that money should follow the child, and that I support traditional public schools, private schools, charter schools, whatever fits the child and the family that will work best so that we can assure that help the child, help the family, and also help the taxpayer.
And what do you know about your opponent's position on those issues?
Well, so far, because the Public Teachers Union is more control of Democratic politics than ever, they would just be supporting traditional public school and not school choice. I support school choice. I think it's best for Rhode Islanders, and especially the community which I grew up in and from which I'm speaking now. I'm talking to you from the West End of Providence. This is home, and we need more and a better education.
There is, under at least President Trump, there were plans, I imagine if he had been reelected, there were plans to have federal scholarship funds go directly to parents so they could put that towards tuition towards a private school or public school or homeschool even of their home choice. If that were to come up again and you were congressman, would you support federal forms of school choice, federal funding or state funding or local funding? Where do you come down on that? Last question today.
Federal funding has to be accepted by the local community. Still, school is local, and school and the federal government should not overrule the local on schools. But that said, if the local community and state want it, then I support it.
All right. Alan Waters, announced candidate for next year's election for U.S. congressional seat in District 1 in Rhode Island. Thanks for joining us on In the Dugout, and we're going to invite you and Congressman Cicilline to do an extended extra innings interview with us, and we'll look forward to having that discussion with you. Alan Waters, thank you.
Thank you, Mike Stenhouse.
Good day. And joining us once again,
an expected rate that we can use. It basically includes everything other than the vaccine.
Got it. Now, I'm still wondering why it took so long and why now. Do you think, I mean, are there other epidemiologists and researchers like yourself who have been raising pressure about this to the point where I'm sure they knew of this data months ago, they just wanted to stick their head in the sand? So what do you know about the collection of epidemiologists like you who weren't beholden to the false narrative and were applying some kind of public or private pressure?
No, I
to
think
health
there's, I
officials?
mean, it's a minority of voices, but I'm hardly alone. You know, and there have been people that have a much higher profile than me that thankfully have spoken out about this. I mean, Jay Bhattacharya and Martin Kulldorff wrote an op-ed where they basically said it's as crazy to oppose vaccinating everybody. It's as crazy to endorse vaccinating everybody as it is to oppose vaccinating everybody.
All right, so,
So
got it. All right, so as simply as you can, just talk, you're talking to parents, you're not making a medical case. In this report here, according to the WHO, children should not be vaccinated for the moment. In your own words, you're talking to a mother of a college age or high school age or even K through 12 age student. What is it? Very clearly, very simply, non-medical, what would you say to those parents?
I would say that parents I would say an independent young adults, certainly under 30, unless they have some sort of high risk condition, they should avoid these vaccines. There's really no benefit to them, and I would quadruple down on that if there's any evidence that they've been infected.
Because in past shows, we've been saying, well, you at least ought to take these data into consideration when making a decision about your student. We've kind of been taking that informed consent, you know, you make the decision, but with the WHO and with this data now and the CDC, I mean, we are now to the point when you can advise against the vaccine.
I think so particularly for very low risk people, certainly for the period of time we're in right now, where the virus is so largely burned out in the United States, in all parts of the United States, that you know, if you're worried about, you know, the fall season and the winter season coming up, it's not even clear that it'll be COVID. It could be a resurgence of the flu this year, et cetera. So between the low background rate of the virus itself, you know, we're not in last winter's surge, let alone the original surge in the spring of 2020. We're not in that period where a vaccine's available. You're at extraordinarily low risk. Again, Mike, if you've been infected, just take it out of consideration altogether.
All right. Now, in some cases, it's not going to entirely be the parents or the student's choice. As you and I have discussed, there are many colleges, universities,
something
CCRI,
like 540
who are mandating every student to come on campus. They have to have a vaccine. Now that flies. Okay, that was based on old data, pre-WHO, pre-CDC guidance. What
should
those schools do now?
Just to be clear, what the WHO is saying is basically for the pediatric age range.
Okay, all right.
They're not really talking about, you know, 18 to 29.
But yet the data shows 18 to 29, right?
well, in terms of the myopericarditis, the risk certainly goes up to about age 30, maybe even age 39.
So what is your advice to these higher education institutions?
I think they're putting themselves, first of all, it's just wrong. And it's wrong because, you know, I'm involved. I'm involved in litigation, advising litigation. And you can see many mandates are insisting that there's no medical exemption for prior infection. That's absurd. That's counter-scientific. And in fact, there's enough evidence now, there's at least 3 studies that show that vaccinating people who've been previously infected puts them at increased risk for adverse events, including serious adverse events. So they're opening themselves up to liability. It's unscientific. And I also, there's, having seen some of these cases now, there's a whole, outside of the medical domain, there's a whole series of basic liberty issues that are involved in these mandates.
But I'm just talking medically right now.
Yeah, so medically, absolutely, prior infection should be a medical exemption, because there are these exemptions that you're allowed. You know, there are other medical exemptions in terms of people.
But I'm just saying, should the university remove the indiscriminate
absolutely
mandate? Okay,
absolutely. The University of Iowa, which is an enormous system, has said that there cannot be any vaccine mandates. Moreover, they've already said that
did they change their tune from a prior mandate?
No. They never had a mandate. They just said they just want it known that there cannot be a vaccine mandate, and they're also said there cannot be a mask mandate.
Are you aware of any university that, based on this new guidance just in the last few days, that has reversed?
I'm not aware.
Vaccine mandate policy?
I'm not aware, and I'd be surprised, Mike. This is part of the problem.
You'd be surprised.
I'd be surprised if they did, because everyone's dug their. Well, look at, go right back.
They're that stubborn. They're that invested in this.
I go right back to the CDC and this ACIP committee and the FDA themselves. While on the one hand, they've issued this warning, FDA said that the vaccine has to include this warning about the risk of myopericarditis, particularly in the young. They haven't said anything about a moratorium or the need to do the proper thing, Mike. What the U.S. Army did, which was proper, when they saw a signal with the revaccination campaign or the vaccination campaign post 9/11 for smallpox, when they saw a signal, and it was a strong signal, it probably even stronger than this one, because you could pick it up in a smaller group of people. But when they saw this signal, they actually did an observational study comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated in real time, and bringing everyone in for serial follow-up, in their case, at least for blood work and for an electrocardiogram. And by doing that, they increased the yield of the asymptomatic cases by 6-fold, just by knowing what their baseline was. And interestingly, Mike, it was too small a control group, but they still had a control group. The control group was flu vaccine. They had a flu vaccine control group, and it showed nothing. You know, so these are very simple studies, given the
right. But there's no time for those studies before the fall semester. So these
there could be Mike, there could be if they, well, it depends on the motivation. It's purely the motivation of the. Mike, look at the situation even in Rhode Island or even in New England. You could easily identify tens of thousands, if not a couple of 100,000s, of less than 30-year-olds planning to get vaccinated, and those who just don't want to be bothered. And you could have a comparison group very easily, and you would get baseline blood draws, I would say not only EKGs but echoes, and then do them when they come back for the second dose, because it's going to be the mRNA vaccines, right. And then within a week of the second dose.
All right. So you think if there's a will, there's a way to do the proper study on this. All right. Let's move on. All right. Let's move on. Let's leave it at that. All right. Now you sent a second slide. I'm not sure what it is. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but what does this slide show?
Oh, this is Rhode Island, Mike.
Oh, this is Rhode Island. Okay.
Yeah.
These are 5 cases of young, healthy people that develop myocarditis
right.
after the vaccine.
All of them present with crushing chest pain. They have to be ruled out for potential heart attacks. They're all hospitalized. The youngest boy, 14 years old, was hospitalized in the pediatric ICU. These are not trivial hospitalizations. And this is a major, and they're all
age
healthy.
14, age 17, age 19, age 20, age 20.
That's right. These are healthy young men coming in for no reason other than they got the vaccine. Now, I've looked at 21 even more serious cases than this, quite frankly. And there's a basic index. You see it here. Go up to the second 20-year-old, Mike, and in the black text, which talks about ejection fraction. Okay, a normal ejection fraction, frankly, in a person like this should be over 60%. But so this is considered maybe questionable.
That's basically the rate of blood flow, right? Or something like that.
What it is, it's more literally the volume of blood that's ejected with each beat.
Right.
Okay. So it's a very good gross index of heart function, of cardiac function. It's our most basic measure, really. That when that number gets below 50%, particularly in a healthy person, then, and it's in the setting of myocarditis, that predicts long-term complications. I've now identified amongst under 30-year-olds, and this is now nationally, we got maybe one that comes close in Rhode Island, but nationally, I've identified 21 cases where these data were available in VAERS, and the ejection fraction was under 50%, sometimes down to the 30s. And there were 2 cases that literally presented in basically in shock. And so there can be very serious, consequences to this. And even with young people who tend to recover, we don't know the long-term consequences.
Do you have a guess as to why this impacts young males more than young females?
No, I really don't know. I really don't know. But it's just been an observation with myocarditis in general, actually.
All right, here's a question from one of our viewers from Facebook for you. Al, we'll just leave it at Al. Says, I may not be able to watch tonight, but can you ask Dr. Bostom about the people like myself that have heart issues? He doesn't say what kind of heart issue. If the jab will affect me the same way. I'm not getting either one to begin with, but I want to be certain. And why are they just focusing on the younger age group, the older folks like me that have pre-existing heart conditions? Should we get it as well?
Right. So it's a good question.
Yeah.
But it's really an unknown. So far, though, I will tell you, at least with this phenomenon of, in close proximity to the second dose, there's a striking predilection for the younger people. Now it's also harder to tease out in people that may have comorbid conditions where it could be contributing to an exacerbation of someone that's had a history of heart failure or someone that's had MIs in the past. There's a whole series of symptoms now that may coalesce and make it more difficult to tease out. But so far, the big signal that's being picked up is in these previously healthy people who have this very dramatic presentation. Doesn't mean that it's not affecting some of the older age groups, but it's just going to be harder to pick up.
All right, so let me ask it this way. So I guess a heart condition would be a pre-existing potential.
Right, and therefore
right?
your risk for
right,
COVID.
So let me finish the question the way, just to put it in layman's terms. So we've been saying all along that if you have a comorbidity or you're at high risk, you should probably get the vaccine. So I think the question then boils down to, well, since this vaccine is causing heart issues in younger people, if my comorbidity is a heart issue, am I at more risk from the virus or at more risk from the vaccine?
Yeah.
How would you weigh that?
It's not an easy one to sort out, Mike, but basically, as things stand now, and given the availability of the data, which may not be the greatest, you would probably still have to argue in favor of overall in favor of the vaccine. Now, do you recall in Scandinavia at the beginning of the vaccine rollout, there was almost a halt, because very early on in the care homes their equivalent of nursing homes, there was a cluster of deaths. And it took a long time, but eventually those deaths were examined. So these are in people 80 plus years old. And when they reviewed the first 100 cases of these deaths that were in some proximity to the vaccines that were given, they determined that out of 100, 10 were likely caused by the vaccine. Now that may not sound like many, but as a percentage, that's a high percentage. So what I'm saying, Mike, is that these vaccines may be contributing to adverse outcomes in people with who they were basically designed for, in terms of the highest risk for COVID, but also have a lot of comorbidity. So it's an ongoing issue.
All right, let me put you on the spot here. Unfair. You can say I got to think about it if you'd rather, but I'm really bothered by not you, but by the fact that these colleges will probably persist with these vaccine mandates despite these new guidances from the WHO and the CDC.
They will. They will.
I know that in other states, lawmakers signed by physicians have put out a call asking that colleges rescind or reverse those mandates.
Right.
I don't think there's a lawmaker in our state that has that kind of courage. If our center were to write a letter, an open letter, calling on colleges to rescind these vaccines, would you, and do you think you could find other doctors who would co-sign that?
I would. I mean, but and maybe Dr. Cortella, but I don't know where it's going to go beyond that, unfortunately, Mike.
Okay.
I am advising.
I feel very strongly about that. I mean, this is just insane, right? To continue these mandates, given these data and these new guidances from these supposedly trusted health organizations.
Well, the mandates at minimum, Mike, should be watered down dramatically. They should certainly endorse as a medical exemption previous infection.
Right.
If they can't even do that, then there's something wrong with these people.
All right. Last question. And there's a lot of conspiracies out there about the vaccines and the virus itself, but this one I don't know what the truth is here, but I saw a headline that I'm going to share here, and I want you to tell me, is this just wild speculation, I would guess it is, or is there any medical research to suggest this that you've seen? So this headline, I'm not going to show the video, but apparently they show red blood cells that appear, they use the word appear, it's a tough, appear to be damaged after they get the mRNA vaccine, and maybe this could be leading to some of these problems. Is there any, do you concur with any of that kind of stuff?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about this specific report. I did see it, and I tried to glance at what their argument was, and so they're arguing that it's an effect of the spike protein. Now, I had never seen this in terms of direct effects on the red blood cells, but there's laboratory evidence that the spike protein can cause irritation of the single cell lining of blood vessels called the endothelium, and it contributes to an endothelitis. Now when the endothelium is inflamed or disrupted.
What is the endothelium?
It's a very thin cell layer that lines blood vessels.
Okay.
And it's very important for transport, across into the wall of the vessel, et cetera. And when there's endothelial injury of any sort, it can trigger long-term the development of the whole atherosclerotic process, and in the short term, it is prothrombotic, pro-clot.
Yep.
So if there's an endothelial injury by the spike protein that contributes to thrombosis, if this observation has any merit, that would sort of up the ante. In other words, if you could actually cause damage to red blood cells, which causes them to coalesce, and then have an interaction with a damaged endothelium, that might make things even worse in terms of the prothrombotic tendency.
All right.
We're clearly seeing, Mike, an excess of cases of thrombosis, not just with the Janssen, the adenovirus vector vaccines, but with the mRNA vaccines. How big a signal that actually is, who's really affected. There was a very dramatic case in Utah of a 6'10" basketball player and his father in rapid succession.
We talked
in rapid succession, which tells you that it's at least possible that the vaccine interacts with a genetic predisposition. So.
Okay. All right, Dr. Andrew Bostom, again, we applaud you for being a visionary on this and leading the way. Again, no place else in this state, and certainly no place else in America we've been so far ahead of the curve on this. So I thank you for your expert analysis. We'll look forward to talking with you next week. Dr. Andrew Bostom.
Sure, Mike. Take care.
Thanks, Andy. My head is spinning again. It's just unbelievable what we see happening. I guess if there's an overriding theme and a theme of this show, these left-wing fake narratives, alternate reality mindsets woke agenda, seeing only what their woke masters tell them, whether it's reading lists in schools for school summer reading lists, whether it's storytelling hour, whether it's supposed racial equity advocates showing the hypocrisy on that front, or whether it's those who are just indiscriminately pushing vaccines. What we see here is the narrative has become everything, whether it's even if it's a fake narrative, even if it's not based on science, the narrative is overriding everything in our society today. Started by the left, developed in academia, picked up by lawmakers who have and then perpetrated by the media. And then I understand how so many people can lose their morals, can lose their principles, and can be convinced of this crap. It's just pure crap, but it's dominating our society. And unless we all stand up and do something about it, attend those school committee meetings, go to that story hour and do the peaceful rosary rally protest, think about whether or not your children should get a vaccine, unless you put in that thought and you take those actions, they are going to dominate and overtake this country. We will see you next week on In the Dugout. Big week again next week. Glad to be with you today. Thanks to Larry Liberty Guy for all he does. Mike Stenhouse. See you next game.